July 27, Dublin. Dr. Santosh Yadav, a data scientist living in Ireland for 4 years, finishes his dinner and starts walking home. Until 6 teenagers appeared from behind and just started hitting him, made him bleed and broke his cheekbone. Why? Because he looked Indian. Now you might think this was just a wrong place, wrong time type of a situation, but this wasn't random at all. In few weeks later, another Indian man who had worked in Ireland for 20 years got jumped and robbed. The attacks became so frequent that the Indian embassy had to issue a public warning telling Indians to avoid walking alone after dark in certain areas. And it's not just Ireland. Open your phone right now and find any social media post about Indians achieving something, and you will find weird comments. For example, an Indian gaming company just announced their big AAA title. Read the comments there. Final boss, a shower. Pajit Simulator 2025. Lies of Pajit. I can smell curry. So you see, every single reply is designed to not just criticize the game, but to humiliate the people who made it. This happens every single day now. Street shitters, curry munchers, show Bobs and Virginie. The Pajit meme has become internet's favorite weapon against anyone who looks remotely Indian. So what's really happening here? And why are Indians becoming targets across the globe, even though we are some of the most successful people in these countries? Let's understand this. So let's look at some global stats. In Canada, hate crimes against South Asians exploded by 143% between 2019 to 2022. Now, think about that for a moment. In 2022 alone, 1 out of 4 Indians have been targeted for being Indian. Ireland recorded 676 hate crimes in 2024. In July alone, the attacks got so brutal, they made international headlines. A 40-year-old Indian man was ambushed in Tala by gang who stripped him and left him bleeding on the street. And then they falsely accused him of inappropriate behavior around children, using lies to justify their violence. But perhaps the most heartbreaking case happened in Waterford. 6-year-old Nia Naveen was playing outside her home when boys aged 12 to 14 punched her on the face. They called her dirty Indian and told her to go back to India. And she was just 6-year-old. In United States, online hate speech targeting Indians surged by 75% after the 2024 elections. The US government has made it systematically harder for Indians to work there. The H-1B visa registration fee went from $10 to $215. Now, that's a 2,000% increase. And then they're adding another $250 integrity fee, specifically targeting Indian applicants starting October 2025. They have tightened the rules on what jobs qualify, making Indians IT professionals who were eligible yesterday suddenly ineligible today. 45% of Indians H-1B holders, the Indians who build their lives around the American dream, now say that they would return back to India if forced to leave the US, and only 35% would choose a US work visa again. So you see what's happening? The country that was built by immigrants' ambition is successfully destroying immigrants' hope. And they're making it harder for Indians to reach and survive in US. And now they have banned Harvard University from enrolling international students in May 2025. Now we're talking about Harvard, America's most prestigious university. 788 Indian students were directly affected, forced to look for alternatives or risk losing their legal status. And the official reason was Harvard's refusal to comply with federal demands over foreign student records. But look at the timing, right after Indian enrollment peaked in 2024. Social media has become the primary battlefield against Indian identity. Instagram floods any Indian video with comments like Pajit detected, opinion rejected, and designated shitting streets. And Indian students posting normal college content get comments like imagine the smell as their top responses. So the Pajit meme has become the universal weapon to dismiss anything any Indian says or does. Our young people now expect racist comments on any Indian content they post online. We have kind of accepted the humiliation as a price of participation. This targeting of Indians is not a recent phenomenon. It has deep historical roots. In the 1970s, the US President Richard Nixon was recorded making racist comments about Indians. He called Indians a slippery, treacherous people and made derogatory remarks about their abilities and character. Now, this was the President of the United States expressing views that influenced policy. In 1907, in Washington state, white mobs attacked Indian workers in lumber mills. The attacks were organized and systematic. The stated reason was economic. "They are taking our jobs," they said. But the violence was purely racial. Hundreds of Indians were beaten and driven out of town. Not just in US, one of the most shameful episodes in Canadian history happened in 1914. A ship called Komagata Maru arrived in Vancouver carrying 376 sick passengers who wanted to immigrate to Canada. The Canadian government refused them entry and forced the ship to return to India. And when the ship reached Calcutta, the British colonial police opened fire on all the passengers, killing many. This happened in the same Canada that today promotes multiculturalism and diversity. Now let's talk about some other countries. From 1901 to 1973, Australia had an official White Australia policy, designed to keep out non-European immigrants, especially Indians and other Asians. The policy was so openly racist and specifically targeted Indian immigrants. Even after the policy was officially ended, the attitude persisted. In 2009-2010, attacks on Indian students in Australia showed that the underlying mindset remained the same. And the attacks were so brutal, they became an international cry for help. Every day, Indian students were beaten with beer bottles, robbed or targeted with racist comments, and some were attacked while wearing turbans or traditional attire. The racist roots go back even further. In 1796, Charles Grant wrote observations on the Asiatic subjects of Great Britain, calling Indians exceedingly depraved and arguing that Britain had a duty to civilize them. This became the ideological foundation of colonialism. The British systematically portrayed Indians as dirty, untrustworthy, and inferior to justify their rule. These stereotypes were spread globally and persist even today in comments like "street shitter" and "imagine the smell." Throughout history, the pattern is consistent. Economic stress hits Western countries. Immigrants get blamed for the problem. Indians become particular targets. Violence and discrimination increases. Indians are forced to leave or accept second-class treatment. This happened in 1907, in the 1970s, in 2009 and 2010, and it's happening again now. There are several factors that make Indians particular targets for racism and discrimination. Indians are the second largest migrant population globally. We are everywhere and we are visible. In Canada, Indians make up 30% of all the new permanent residents, the largest share. And when any group becomes this visible, it attracts attention. And unfortunately, the attention often turns negative when economic or social problems arise. Now, this might sound strange, but Indian success creates resentment. In America, 70% of AI graduate students are international, with Indians leading the number. At Meta, 15% of US employees are H-1B visa holders, compared to 0.5% nationally. In Ireland, over half of the new nurses in 2024 were trained in India, compared to only 22% trained locally. So you understand, we are literally keeping their healthcare system running. This success challenges the narrative that Western countries are inherently superior. If Indians can excel in their own countries, it questions their assumptions about intelligence, capability, and worth. Now let's be honest about what we are dealing with. White supremacy isn't just about extreme groups. It's a mindset that views white people and Western culture as inherently superior. And when Indians succeed in Western countries, it challenges this worldview. And the response is to diminish that success through stereotypes and discrimination. The Pajit meme is a perfect example. No matter what an Indian achieves, it gets reduced to just a joke. This serves to maintain the psychological comfort that Western superiority provides. Indians are particularly vulnerable because we are numerous and visible. We often work in high-paying industries like tech and healthcare. We are seen as foreign even after living somewhere for decades. And we are not seen as politically powerful enough to retaliate. Many Western attitudes towards Indians are shaped by colonial history. For 200 years, Indians were portrayed as inferior subjects who needed Western guidance. Even though colonialism officially ended, these mental frameworks persist. Comments expressing surprise that Indians speak English well or shock that Indian restaurants are clean reflects this colonial mindset. Indian culture is becoming more visible globally. Hindu temples, Diwali celebration, Indian food, yoga, meditation, Indian culture influence is growing. For some people, this represents unwanted change. They preferred when Indian culture was exotic and limited, not mainstream or influential. There is a bigger story here that goes beyond individual racism. India's rise as a global power is fundamentally changing how Indians are perceived and treated abroad. For decades after World War II, America was the undisputed global leader. Countries looked to America for technology, education, investment, and guidance. Being American meant being on top of the world hierarchy. And India's rise challenges this. We are projected to become the world's third largest economy. We have our own space program, we have our own nuclear weapons, we have our growing tech sector and increasing global influence. We are not asking for American permission anymore. India practices strategic autonomy. We make decisions based on our national interest, not what America or other Western countries want. This independence frustrates Western policymakers who are used to smaller countries following their lead. When you can't control a country directly, you target its diaspora. Making life difficult for Indians abroad sends a message to India. Play by our rules or you people will suffer. The Harvard ban isn't really about campus protest. It's about showing India that America can hurt Indian soft power through education. The H-1B restrictions aren't just about American jobs. They are about cutting off Indians' brain drain advantage. America's rivalry with China creates anxiety about Asian economic power generally, but China is too big and powerful to target directly. India becomes a more manageable target for expressing this anxiety. Notice that Chinese people don't face the same level of online harassment that Indians do. Chinese achievements don't get mocked the same way as Indians. So basically, Indians have become the face of Asian threat because we are seen as less dangerous to attack. For decades, India's best and brightest left for opportunities abroad. This brain drain helped Western countries and weakened India. Now that's changing. India is becoming more and more attractive and immigration isn't necessary for success. And this terrifies Western countries because they have built their advantage partially on importing talent from countries like India. If that talent stays home or returns home, their competitive advantage decreases. Indians abroad are more culturally confident now. We have built temples, we celebrate festivals publicly, and we don't hide our identity to fit in. This confidence comes from India's rising status. When your home country is successful, you feel less need to assimilate completely into your host country's culture. This cultural assertiveness creates backlash from people who preferred when Indians tried to blend in and minimize their differences. The racism that Indians face abroad isn't random or temporary. It's a systematic response to India's rise as a global power and the success of Indian communities worldwide. This creates a difficult situation for millions of Indians living and working abroad because you're kind of caught up between your contribution to your host countries and the anxiety those countries feel about India's growing influence. For Indians abroad, this means being more aware of the broader context. The discrimination you face isn't just about individual prejudice, it's connected to the geopolitical tension and economic competition. Document incidents, seek legal support when needed, and build strong community networks. But also remember that you have options. India's growing economy offers opportunities that didn't exist for previous generations. And for India as a country, this is both a challenge and an opportunity. Our people abroad need better protection and support from our government. But this targeting also shows that India has become important enough to worry about. The racism is real, the discrimination is happening, and it's likely to continue as India grows stronger. But understanding why it's happening will help us to respond more efficiently. What matters is how we respond with dignity, strength, and confidence in our country's bright future. Remember that they are not targeting you because you're weak. They are targeting you because you represent something powerful. An India that can no longer be ignored or controlled. And that's something every Indian should be proud of.